That's one thing we really examine closely is fire suppression and fire alarm. And those are very difficult systems to get right. So that's a constant issue. I'm writing up a report right now with fire alarm and fire sprinkler issues where the fire heads are corroded and they can't work properly. If we have a corroded fire sprinkler head, it very well not work or not function properly and direct water where it needs to go. So we look at those minute details in the course of doing our inspection.
Welcome to the Rental Property Owner and Real Estate Investor Podcast, brought to you by the Rental Property Owners Association, where real estate investors have found success since 1968. I'm your host, Brian Hamrick from Hamrick Investment Group. This episode is sponsored by Green Property Management, managing everything from single-family homes to apartment complexes in the West Michigan area. Find out more at greenpropertymgt.com. And RCB and Associates, helping real estate investors and small business owners navigate the complex world of health insurance and Medicare benefits at rcbassociatesllc.com. Hello and welcome to episode 507. Before you buy or sell commercial property, there's one document that can quietly kill your deal: the property condition assessment. Miss a foundation issue, flood damage, or hidden structural defect, and you could be looking at six figures in surprise costs, or worse, a lawsuit. Today, we're diving into how PCAs protect investors, what can go wrong, and why you should never rely on a boilerplate report. Our guest is Greg Trotter, a 50-year construction and consulting veteran who's reviewed thousands of properties across the United States and served as an expert witness in PCA-related lawsuits. Greg, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Brian. I appreciate it.
Tell our audience what you do and why it's so necessary, Greg.
Let's look at those properties behind you, high rises, even the bridge. You have a river there, so you have walls along rivers and so forth. And what we do is we do limited to commercial building type properties where there's someone investing, someone is even leasing a property, wants to know what they're getting themselves into. And the reason is they don't want surprises for them and their investors, or in the hold period that all of a sudden comes up and it was never pointed out as a potential issue before. So you do not want to buy someone else's problem. And I see that a lot, right? Is all of a sudden, why are they selling it? Is it they selling it because it's just they're overcome with a number of issues coming up, or are they poorly managing and don't know? It's a number of myriad of things. But what I do is I protect those people buying properties as to what the potential risks are and what has happened and what could happen going toward to the future. Give them a capital expenditure sort of plan on their hold period during when they own the property and so forth. And it really is valuable because let's go to the lease idea even. Like I was on a building the other day. It was just a little office and warehouse type facility, right? And I get on the roof and the skylights are failed. There's old HVAC units up there. A lot of things could fail at any time. And who goes on a roof if they're going to lease a little office space with some warehousing? On and on and on. So you really should be informed prior to making an investment and committing to leasing or owning a property for 5, 10, 15 years. Because after that, it's you. So what I try to do is really engage the buyer, engage what they have to be concerned with, have a management meeting afterwards, and put out a report pointing out what's going on with all the systems within the building, whether it's structure, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, parking garage, site drainage, or whatever. And, we find issues with all that. And it just is so valuable to have that document in your hand, because all of a sudden you have leverage, whether it's a fire alarm system issue, a structural issue, or whatever, and they need to be aware of it, and they can decide to buy or not to buy, or negotiate and make sure that they have the wherewithal to take care of addressing issues that we come up with, immediate needs, we call them.
So in the residential world, single family, you get a home inspection report to tell you these things. But once you jump up to the commercial world, if you're buying an industrial property, an apartment building, anything that has a bigger structure and components, you're going to want to get a property condition assessment. And it's different from the appraisal, because people are used to, okay, if I'm going to buy a commercial property, the bank's going to want to see an appraisal. But often the bank also wants to see that PCA, the property condition assessment. Am I correct so far, Greg? And at what point do you come into the process, and who brings you in to do this report?
A lot of times it could be just the investor themselves or the capital group that's buying that property like right behind your head. They need to know, because need really good accounting planning going forward on that property. Sometimes there is a bank report, but it varies differently from an equity report where there's a lot of skin in the game and they want to know the actual conditions. So believe it or not, and I learned this long after I got into it, that our reports are a little different because we're equity driven to really sit down, hold the hand of the buyer and let them know what's going on. And not necessarily, the bank doesn't maybe want to see some of these issues. So sometimes, believe it or not, we have someone else there doing a PCA inspection for the bank, or to be directed to the lender rather than to be directed to the real individuals that have skin in the game. So our report is directed towards those people who have that involvement.
The people who are actually going to be managing and asset managing that property on a daily basis, they're the ones who really need to know, okay, what are we getting into? What are some of the fires that we're going to have to put out that we're not aware of right now?
Yeah, that's it. A lot of fire system issues do come up, and with sprinkler heads and sprinkler systems and fire alarms. And it's actually a very relevant topic. Good job. Because those systems alone can be very problematic, and that's one thing we really examine closely is fire suppression and fire alarm. And those are very difficult systems to get right. So that's a constant issue. I'm writing up a report right now with fire alarm and fire sprinkler issues where the fire heads are corroded and they can't work properly. If we have a corroded fire sprinkler head, it very well not work or not function properly and direct water where it needs to go. So we look at those minute details in the course of doing our inspection.
Yeah, and those are things that add up. I mean, if you have a fire suppression issue that you're not aware of when you buy the property, well, eventually you will become aware of it, and it's going to cost you a lot of money. Take us through the different, like in a PCA report, what are the different sections and the different components that you're looking into and inspecting, and what's the thoroughness? I mean, if you're talking about corroded fire sprinkler heads, are you turning on the fire suppression system to check them? I mean, how are you even testing for that?
No, there is an annual fire inspection done as required by every jurisdiction. So we will not do a flow test, if you will, with the fire suppression system. But what we will do is examine all the inspections, all the riser rooms, that sort of thing. And so first of all, in an inspection, we look at the site work, right? There's always drainage problems, right? Where there's erosion or washouts or broken pipes or whatever on the site. So we do a site assessment of the site itself and make sure that the parking lot is there in good shape, and is it properly lit, and where is the stormwater supposed to go? It's supposed to be sloped. The grade's supposed to be sloped around the perimeter of the building, and then the water knows to go away. Because as you can imagine, in the last few years, we've seen a lot of stories about flooding, right? We want to be sure that the units, the buildings, the entrances do not flood. So that's site work. Then we look at, from there, we look at the foundation. So structure, right? So we examine the structure. On the report I'm writing up right now with the columns, the wood columns weren't flashed properly and weren't properly put together. Is it the end of the world to fix it? No, someone can get to those columns and fix them. But so I tell them, there's this problem. This, if not arrested, could be an issue in the future, take care of it. Then we look at windows and water infiltration and exterior siding, and then of course the roof system, and how old is the shingles, or what type of system does it properly drain into gutters, downspouts, internal drains. How much life expectancy do we have with the roof? Because that's one of the most important components, of course, of a building, is it's really a roof inspection over a building, and you really got to get that right. And then you have the electrical system, plumbing systems that are always analyzed from the main panels to the sub-panels. Plumbing, how the pipe's doing, are they corroded, have there been repairs, a history of repairs evident, that, and on and on. You know, you go into hidden spaces, attics, basements, those areas, and see how many leaks in those areas as well. So it's kind of like analyzing by system, kind of like a doctor does with you. There's various functional systems throughout. The mechanical room, in my feeling, is the heart. So that's where your HVAC systems are, a lot of your water systems and so forth, and that's where the heart is of the building. So there you have it. It's from the top roof down into the basement and everything in between, watching for water infiltration and flood issues, that sort of thing, as you walk along the property, around the property.
One of the things that I've seen, because I've bought commercial apartments before and had the bank order PCA reports. And one of the things that are very helpful with is breaking down the different components and putting kind of a timeline on when they'll need to be either repaired or replaced over a period of time. So it really helps with CapEx and improvement budgeting as well. Is that something you typically do in your PCAs?
Yeah, we call it estimated useful life. So with the various components like the roof, the plumbing, so forth, there's an estimated useful life for every component in the building. So we're looking at that, and when should we expect to replace it? And what's the cost of that? So yes, we should be reporting to the buyer of the property, okay, you have about 10 more years on the roof. Good deal. And it looks like it's maintainable, it's been maintained, and there may be some minor issues to be tweaked in those 10 years, but we talk about that during the hold period of what the intention is by the buyer. Then there is the cost. So what's the cost per square foot for shingles or built-up roofs? And we would give that and put that into a planning table for them to know what they need to set aside every year, and what they might have to cost, what would the cost be of immediate needs, those items that don't function, or they're a life safety issue, and those are highlighted as well. So you have much better budgeting, planning in operating your property.
What are some of the things you might see when you're doing these inspection reports that surprise not only the buyer, or the person who's going to lease the property, but also maybe the owner of the property? There's
always surprises in almost every inspection. I think you really should go into every inspection looking for what would be one-offs, things that would be unanticipated, especially if it's a 1987 property. What should we assume that we know what we'd look at for dates and ages and components and so forth. But what if we see something that's really different? Well, you should be looking for something different. And those are the things to tell your client.
Give us some examples of things that you've seen and that have been surprising and shocking.
Penthouse of that building behind you. I've gone up just recently in one of those buildings, and I went to the penthouse, 4 penthouse units in that building.
In Grand Rapids here.
And similar to that one right there. It is that it found that the 4 penthouses were all down, out. There'd been leaks into the units. These are millions of dollars units, and there was cracks and this was a building that was built in 2008. Now that is so disappointing, because somebody spent a lot of money, a lot of time in building and putting this whole development together, and all of a sudden we have significant issues with balconies. One of the things maybe you know is that when you buy multifamily properties, one of the biggest hazards is balconies. There needs to be a close examination for water intrusion, that sort of thing at balconies. And surprises are very well there. So that's a target-rich environment because water could be going the wrong way into the units. There could be deteriorated framing. There could be concrete that has actually got rusted in the slab and create cracks in the balconies. So there's just one area where you go, I got to pay attention to this and examine how the balconies are performing. And it's really expensive and disruptive to fix these issues. One of my funny surprises was when I walked the property in the next door, next to where I was looking at a multifamily property, and there was a big gully that shouldn't have been there at all. What's the gully formed from? Broken pipes. Broken pipes, what they did there was they put pipes together for stormwater, and then all of a sudden these pipes shifted next door, and what was happening is water and dirt was getting into the storm drainage pipes that was related to the property that I was working on. And so, I mean, I was Frank Hardy with that moment. I was like, Jesus, what have we discovered here that no one ever walks in these woods, no one would ever found it, and it does impact the property that I'm on. So it's another issue I've run into was where we were looking at it really hard at this project in Houston, and I go down into the main mechanical room, and there's guys in there, and they were working on the fire suppression pump. The parts were here and there, and there was a holding tank that was all rusted out, and it was a fairly new property, so it was very aggressive corrosion in this issue, and literally the system was not running, not operable, and really that should be a high urgent matter that needs to be got done before I got there. And the problem is that you really need a fire watch. You need someone to monitor this property if the fire suppression system is down. So there was a lot of deferred maintenance. And that's one of the things that catches a lot of buyers is things have not been taken care of. They didn't know how to maintain them, or they didn't have the money to maintain them. And you may be buying a surprise when you get around to your turn to operate this property. And that's one reason I'm not going to hold back. I am going to penetrate and evaluate all the systems so that there are as few surprises as possible.
I'd like to take a moment to tell you about Green Property Management. Not only do they manage everything from single-family homes to apartment complexes in the West Michigan area, they also manage my entire portfolio. So I can tell you from personal experience that their unique flat fee management style is worth a closer look. If you feel that your property isn't operating to its fullest potential, then Green Property Management can help you take a holistic approach that will save you money, eliminate your headaches, and increase your net income. And if you're a property manager interested in applying Green Property Management's model, give them a call at 1-866-95-GREEN or visit them on the web at greenpropertymgt.com. If you're thinking of leaving your W-2 job and becoming a full-time real estate investor, one of the greatest costs you must consider is healthcare for you and your family. When I made this transition myself, I found the whole healthcare insurance process to be confusing and frustrating. That's why I'm glad I met Chad Creasy at RCB & Associates. Chad is a professional health insurance agent who helps real estate investors and small business owners understand and choose their best healthcare options. And best of all, his services are covered by the insurance company and won't cost you a dime. If you live in Michigan and are expecting a change in your healthcare insurance coverage for any reason, or losing employer coverage or transitioning into Medicare, then you owe it to yourself to contact Chad Creasy at rcbassociatesllc.com.
Do you find that people sometimes are reluctant to commission a PCA report because they're afraid it might be a deal killer?
The acquisition side of a group, right? They hate me. They worry about this killing a deal. But what if it's for a good reason, right? So yeah, there's a lot of people that when the PCA report is ordered, it's near the end of it's getting ready to close. So these items that I find could kill the deal or slow it up. And that I even put in my reports, do not close until this issue is closed out and addressed and a budget created for it. So yeah, I'm not there for everybody. I'm there for the people who really need good guidance on not getting into trouble in the purchase of a property. And it's just an honor to do that. And I really take it to heart.
And then sometimes you get brought into litigation matters. I mean, how often have you testified in court? And what are some examples or stories from that?
One PCA, one recent case I was involved with was one of my competitors did an inspection on a hotel. And they missed all the fundamental things in their report, that when the buyer opened the door, turned the key, opened up to their new property, they found that it was not at all what they were reported to be buying, meaning that the property had a problematic lift station, sewer lift station, so there would be backups in the property with the sewer system. There was no basements, it had crawl spaces underneath it, and there was no access in those crawl spaces to evaluate the structure, and they were deteriorating significantly. So the foundation was being challenged. There was a multitude of issues at the roofs that said they were good. And you could tell by Google Earth, let alone me, that these roofs really were worn and needed to be replaced. So it was so inaccurate that it was a pretty easy case to settle, because this, again, national firm that competes with me got it so wrong. We also get involved with cases where there's distressed properties, and we have to report to the court, the judge, as to the conditions that are going on the property with regards to life safety and what the bank is getting back. So we have to testify in those cases, because some cases where I've been involved with that, it's been like a hotel, and the life safety systems, even the exits, that sort of thing, were not adequate for what you need to get out of the building. So it's kind of a regular thing when you start touching so many properties that you could very well be involved with testifying as to issues you saw when you were there. That's a lot of it.
Take us back to the beginning of the conversation and tell our listeners once again, or caution our listeners once again, about buying commercial property and why it's so necessary to get one of these reports.
There's emotion. You've found a great property. You are in love with it. You needed somebody else, a third-party expert, to work for you, to not buy someone else's problems, to delineate what's good, what's working fine, and where you need to potentially look at future costs involved. And so it's a good capital planning situation where you have someone like me show up, and also even buildings that are built 2007, 2008 can have hundreds. Well, in my case, the report I'm writing right now, we're well over $1 million in roofing and various issues on the property that involve fire alarms, fire sprinkler systems, that sort of thing. And so even newer properties should be looked at really carefully. Even brand new properties should be punch listed. So my purpose is to be the third-party consultant that is not bashful and clear and concise as to what you're getting when you buy and close on this property, and it's really helpful.
Tell our listeners and viewers how they can find out more about your company and get a hold of you.
We're commercial building consultants. We're in Orlando, Florida, right near downtown, near a couple of those high-rises we're talking about. Our website is thecbcteam.com, and we can be, the name of the company is Commercial Building Consultants, and we work all around the country for various clients. In some cases, the clients have been with us for 30 years or longer. So we're available to go where you want us to, when you want us to, and we are all very fastidious on analyzing a potential asset that you're considering purchasing.
And you travel to all 50 states?
47 so far. We're almost to 50. Hawaii and Iowa or something, that sort of thing. But we worked in Canada and the Caribbean as well. And we're privileged to work with foreign buyers of the United States, looking at properties in the United States. So we work on, like right now we're working on a portfolio for a company in France, but they're acquiring properties every year the last few years, and it's such an honor to work with special people across the big pond, if you will. So we take it very seriously, and we're honored to do what we get to do for our clients. It's pretty exciting.
What is your favorite hack or app?
One of the things I don't know if it's an app per se, we have called fax. We get a build fax. There's a car fax, right? Every time we do an inspection, we order a build fax, and that lists all the permits that have been pulled on that property that are registered anywhere, anyhow. So, for example, we know on the property I'm working on right now, there was about 14 roof permits that were pulled after the building closed. There was about 22 mechanical permits that were pulled after the property had been closed. So you start putting a history, and you start seeing even the permit history pointing to potential issues that I really need to know so that I can really get a basis for my opinions and what has happened versus what's going to happen. And that's a really good insight for me. So my answer is, of all things, there's a build fax for that. And I'm sure that not too many people are aware of it, but because every jurisdiction is different, but we need to know what's going on with the permit history on the property. And it's pretty surprising what you can run into, especially structure and that sort of thing.
What is that called? Is it a bill, BILL, or build?
Build fax.
And where do you access that?
We have a subscription with BuildFax, the company, and they're right there within seconds of what we can use on our property prior to getting there, and being prepared to know that there has been a lot of roofing there, or there hasn't, on a property that's got 15 buildings and 15 garages built in 2008. Well, that's helpful. It turns out that if you see little permits pulled on roofing, that tells you repairs, right? Or there's been a high percentage of HVAC that's been replaced. That's great, because the buyer will have a lower percentage of planned the obsolescence and replacement of HVAC equipment going forward. So you can see where these are hidden gems that we use as one way to find out. We have ability to go back in time, of course, in doing environmental site assessments and look at the history of the property even before any building was there. So we look at all that so that we really bring in some back historic knowledge to our analysis. It's great. There's a lot out there to use.
Greg, thanks so much for coming on the show today and sharing your knowledge of PCAs, property condition assessments, why they're necessary when you're purchasing or even leasing commercial real estate, things that you find that, even the owners may not be aware of, and, potential pitfalls. It's been a real pleasure talking with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for letting me be your guest.
I want to thank everybody for listening to this episode. I'm your host, Brian Hamrick from Hamrick Investment Group, and you can find out more about me by going to higinvestor.com. That's higinvestor.com. This episode was sponsored by Green Property Management, managing everything from single-family homes to apartment complexes in the West Michigan area. Find out more at greenpropertymgt.com. And RCB & Associates, helping real estate investors and small business owners navigate the complex world of health insurance and Medicare benefits at rcbassociatesllc.com.
You've been listening to the Rental Property Owner and Real Estate Investor Podcast, brought to you by the Rental Property Owner Association. You can find out more at rpoaonline.org. If you enjoyed this podcast, please go to iTunes to subscribe, rate, and review.